Dear Esther, I have lost track of how long I have been here and how many visits I have made overall. Certainly the landmarks are now so familiar to me that I have to remind myself to actually see the forms and shapes in front of me. I could stumble blind across these rocks, the edges of these precipices, without fear of missing my step and plummeting down to sea. Besides, I have always considered that if one is to fall, it is critical to keep one's eyes firmly open.
Welcome everybody, this is Dear Esther. My name is Maxwell. Ooh, a lighthouse. And basically we are here to find out if this is a game or not. I've been wanting to try this game out for a while because I've heard a lot of people saying that it is a real experience rather than a traditional style of game. So I thought I'd take a run through it, bring you guys along for the ride, see if you can get the same experience out of it as I do. If you're gonna be looking for humour and witty banter, that's probably not the video for you, as I'm probably gonna try and talk as little as possible, just sort of to try and preserve the experience, because like I said, this isn't, it's not really a traditional style of game, it's more of an experience. So basically I want to try and keep it as pure as possible, and see if you guys, what's that, something history, see if you guys can get the same out of it as I did, have the same kind of experience. So yeah, like I said, I'll be talking as little as possible, just interjecting here and there every now and then. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride, guys. That is a hell of a lot of paint. I wonder if that will have any kind of significance later.
Donnelly reported the legend of the hermit, a holy man who sought solitude in its most pure form. Allegedly, he rode here from the mainland in a boat without a bottom, so all the creatures of the sea could rise at night to converse with him. How disappointed he must have been with their chatter. Perhaps now, when all that haunts the ocean is the rubbish dumped from the tankers, he'd find more peace. They say he threw his arms wide in a valley on the south side, and the cliff opened up to provide him shelter. They say he died of fever 116 years later. The shepherds left gifts for him at the mouth of the cave, but Donnelly records they never claimed to have seen him. I have visited the cave and I have left my gifts, but like them, I appear to be an unworthy subject of his solitude.
So it looks like there's going to be a decent amount of voiceovers at least, so apparently that is part of the experience, the voiceovers here, the readings, so hopefully that should keep us entertained through the silences. Now I think we should have a goal, although I think this is more of a linear progression, so it's not really an open sandbox, we can't really roam where we like, but I think a nice goal would probably be to get that red flashing beacon at some point. Probably make that a goal, try and get there eventually.
When you were born, your mother told me, a hush fell over the delivery room. A great red birthmark covered the left side of your face. No one knew what to say, so you cried to fill the vacuum. I always admired you for that you cried to fill whatever vacuum you found. I began to manufacture vacuums just to enable you to deploy your talent. The birthmark faded by the time you were 6 and had gone completely by the time we met, but your fascination with the empty and its cure remained. Donnelly's book had not been taken out from the library since 1974. I decided it would never be missed as I slipped it under my coat and avoided the librarian's gaze on the way out. If the subject matter is obscure, the writer's literary style is even more so. It is not the text of a stable or trustworthy reporter. Perhaps it is fitting that my only companion in these last days should be a stolen book written by a dying man. When someone had died or was dying, or was so ill they gave up what little hope they could sacrifice, they cut parallel lines into the cliff, exposing the white chalk beneath. You could see them from the mainland or the fishing boat, and know to send aid or impose a cordon of protection, and wait a generation until whatever pestilence stalked the cliff paths died along with its hosts. My lines are just for this: to keep any would-be rescuers at bay. The infection is not simply of the flesh.
So it sounds like whoever this narrator is probably a little bit unstable, possibly a little bit mad. I'm sure we'll see and hear a lot more as we progress.
I quote directly: a motley lot with little to recommend them. I have now spent 3 days in their company. That is, I fear, enough for any man not born amongst them. Despite their tedious inclination to quote scripture, they seem to me the most godforsaken of all the inhabitants of the Outer Isles. Indeed, in this case, the very gravity of that term, forsaken by God, seems to find its very apex. It appears to me that Donnelly, too, found those who wander this shoreline to be adrift from any chance of redemption. Did he include himself in that, I wonder? Dear Esther, I met Paul. I made my own little pilgrimage. My Damascus, a small semi-detached on the outskirts of Wolverhampton. We drank coffee in his kitchen and tried to connect to one another. Although he knew I hadn't come in search of an apology, reason or retribution, he still spiraled in panic, thrown high and lucid by his own dented bonnet. Responsibility had made him old. Like us, he'd already passed beyond any conceivable boundary of life.
That was a very weird passage. I can see there's going to be plenty of...
I threw my arms wide and the cliff opened out before me, making this rough home. I transferred my belongings from the bothy on the mount and tried to live here instead. It was cold at night, and the sea lapped at the entrance at high tide. To climb the peak, I must first venture even deeper into the veins of the island, where the signals are blocked altogether. Only then will I understand them, when I stand on the summit and they flow into me, uncorrupted.
So this is very existential. See, there's going to be plenty of lonely walking in this game, so we better get comfortable with our own thoughts. So there's literally no other controls but WASD and left click to zoom in slightly. So that's all we can really do. Just keep moving.
The vegetation here has fossilized from the roots up. To think they once grazed animals here, the remnants of occupation being evidence to that. It is all sick to death. The water is too polluted for the fish, the sky is too thin for the birds, and the soil is cut with the bones of hermits and shepherds. I've heard it said that human ashes make great fertilizer, that we could sow a forest from all that is left of your hips and ribcage, with enough left over to thicken the air and repopulate the bay.
Now that's strange. It's a hydrocarbon chain. I'm sure somebody smart in the comments will probably be able to tell us exactly which hydrocarbon that is. I wouldn't like to guess.
Dear Esther, I have now driven the stretch of the M5 between Exeter and Bristol over 21 times. But although I have all the reports and all the witnesses, and have cross-referenced them within a millimetre using my Ordnance Survey maps, I simply cannot find the location. You'd think there would be marks to serve as some evidence. It's somewhere between the turn-off for Sanford and the Welcome Brake services. But although I can always see it in my rear-view mirror, I have as yet been unable to pull ashore.
So that sounds like he's talking about a car accident. Is it maybe an accident that he was in? Or the person that he's speaking to was in? Maybe this Esther? Was she in a car accident? Or am I playing as Esther? It's from his speech earlier on about making his personal pilgrimage to see Paul. Pretty sure he referenced a dented bonnet. So I'm pretty certain.
There must be a hole in the bottom of the boat. How else could new hermits have arrived?
Certainly must be talking about a car accident at some point.
I had kidney stones, and you visited me in the hospital. After the operation, when I was still half submerged in anesthetic, your outline and your speech both blurred. Now my stones have grown into an island and made their escape, and you have been rendered opaque by the car of a drunk.
Well, there's a lot of information there, so it would seem he's referenced speaking to Esther, and now he spoke to us, referenced us as you, so I'm guessing that means we must be Esther. And there was another mention of a car and a drunk.
What charnel house lies at the foot of this abyss? How many dead shepherds could fill this hole?
So he's definitely referencing a car accident at some point, rendered opaque by the car of a drunk. Opaque is the opposite of transparent. I think from this point on I may stop.
I've begun my ascent on the green slope of the western side. I've looked deep into the mountain from the shaft and understood that I must go up and then find the way under. I will stash the last vestiges of my civilization in the stone walls and work deeper from there. I'm drawn by the aerial and the cliff edge. There is some form of rebirth waiting for me there.
So I think going forward from now on I may stop postulating and making guesses and just leave everything else up to you guys. So you've had my thoughts on the early readings. I'll leave it to you guys now to make your own minds up about what the hell this guy is speaking about.
The bothy was constructed originally in the early 1700s. By then, shepherding had formalized into a career. The first habitual shepherd was a man called Jakobsen, from a lineage of migratory Scandinavians. He was not considered a man of breeding by the mainlanders. He came here every summer whilst building the bothy, hoping eventually that becoming a man of property would secure him a wife and a lineage. Donnelly records that it did not work. He caught some disease from his malcontented goats and died 2 years after completing it. There was no one to carve white lines into the cliff for him either. Inventory. A trestle table we spread wallpaper on in our first home. A folding chair. I laughed at you for bringing camping in the lakes. I was uncomfortable later and you laughed then. This diary, the bed with the broken springs. Once asleep you have to remember not to dream. A change of clothes. Donnelly's book, stolen from Edinburgh Library on the way here. I will burn them all on the last morning and make an aerial of my own.
That is a beautiful sky. Very, very lovely view. One thing can be said is this game is pretty nice to look at.
In a footnote, the editor comments that at this point Donnelly was going insane as syphilis tore through his system like a drunk driver. He's not to be trusted. Many of his claims are unsubstantiated, and although he does paint a colourful picture, much of what he says may have been derived directly from his fever. But I've been here, and I know, as Donnelly did, that this place is always half imagined. Even the rocks and caves will shimmer and blur with the right eyes. They found Jakobsen in early spring. The thaw had only just come. Even though he'd been dead nearly 7 months, his body had been frozen right down to the nerves and had not even begun to decompose. He'd struggled halfway down the cliff path, perhaps looking for some lost goat, or perhaps in a delirium, and expired, curled into a claw right under the winter moon. Even the animals shunned his corpse. The mainlanders thought to bring it home unlucky. Donnelly claims they dragged it to the caves to thaw out and rot. But he is proving an unreliable witness.
So are we about to find the mouldy corpse of a shepherd in this cave? I'm going to brace myself just in case.
Climbing down to the caves, I slipped and fell and have injured my leg. I think the femur is broken. It is clearly infected. The skin has turned a bright, tight pink, and the pain is crashing in on waves, winter tides against my shoreline, drowning out the ache of my stones. I struggled back to the bothy to rest, but it has become clear that there is only one way this is likely to end. The medical supplies I looted from the trawler have suddenly found their purpose. They will keep me lucid for my final ascent.
This does not look like a good idea.